The MMA Prospectus is back, finally. I know you guys have all been looking for it, waiting for it, just living your life for the day that we would return, and now we have returned. Mostly because Tom has finally got his act together for the days that we can shoot this show, and has decided to show up.
Yeah, I thought it would be a nice favor to you to actually show up for this.
Yeah, and well, I'm glad you did too right now, because we have a massively prospect chalked show right in front of us to talk about, and we've got a little bit of stuff to catch up on. So I want to start by catching up on stuff, just because there's no one topic to highlight this Rotterdam show that I feel is so overwhelming that I have to jump in on that. But I do feel like the big thing that we've missed over the last couple weeks has been Yair Rodriguez and his last fight. And so I briefly want to just talk about that, because my God, that was pretty.
Yeah, he really kind of took that step forward again that we were talking about however many weeks ago, that we were kind of looking for from him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's just like his athletic ceiling is so high that it's still like an open question of just how good do his fundamentals have to be for him to be a viable title contender. Because his fundamentals are getting better. He looks more in control, and he's got a better sense of range and distance, and he's doing more basic. Is including more basic pieces in his game, especially his wrestling game.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still just very much this exciting, pull out, whatever, whenever, flashy fighter. And he's just such a good athlete that it may never, it may be a long time before that costs him.
Yeah, no, it's fun to watch. I mean, we talked about we compared him to Rose Namajunas, and that's kind of where I feel he's on that path. Working on adding the little fundamental pieces to his game, but he's not losing the fact that he is a big, athletic, flashy fighter who kills people with head kicks.
Well, and amazingly for him too is that if you just look at Yair, you would never guess that he is the athlete he is.
No.
There's none of the super ripped musculature or outsized frame or just anything to him at all that would make you think, oh, this guy is one of the best athletes in the sport.
Yeah, it is one of those things that the more you watch this sport, the more it's surprising when the dude that looks like an action figure is the athlete he looks like.
It's true. There are a lot of ripped dudes who are actually really kind of slow and clunky and wooden when they actually step in a cage. But Yair just looks like any guy at any gym, and he is the phenom out there. But yeah, I mean, Fili, I think that's other than a knee injury early in his career, that's the first knockout loss of Andre Fili's career. It's the first clean KO loss of his career.
Yeah, and I kind of got a feeling that kick would have wrecked just about anyone.
Yeah. So
it honestly looked like he had gotten soccer kicks standing up.
Yeah, I mean, he basically did. That jumping switch kick. I don't know what you do to defend that or take the shock off of it, because the moment you look for the kick that's coming in low, you're getting the shin right in the head. So that was an amazing performance, and Yair has easily separated himself as a must-watch talent and a guy who, like I say, it's just kind of like, how prepared will he be when he fights for the title? Because that's the only question I have, is not, oh, can he fight for a title someday, or can he be an elite featherweight? It's just like, when he gets to the point where he's fighting for a title, how ready will he be? So, other than that, Cejudo lost expectedly, and Kevin Lee won a close decision. It otherwise wasn't that prospect-heavy a card, frankly.
No, not really.
But now we've got a lot to talk about for this week, which has a lot of talent on it. Maybe at the end we'll get to some of the other prospects that fought last week too, some of the other better performances. But I want to jump forward to this upcoming Rotterdam fight card and the UFC's first trip to the Netherlands. And is so I have two potential names, and I'm wondering which one you're more excited for. Tell me who your big exciting fighter, the young fighter, is on this card.
I mean, for me, it's a bit. It's Tumenov. I mean, like this is, as pointed out on the show previously, he is like the first dude that really got me excited about prospects in MMA. Like going and watching when I heard he was signed, and I think it was Patrick Wyman sent me his highlight reel from like the regional scene, and so Tumenov, always Tumenov.
Yeah, and he's just about hitting the point too where he's not really going to be a prospect anymore. I mean, he's only 24, but he started fighting in 2010. He's fought really consistently since then. And we're getting to the point now, like this Gunnar Nelson fight may be kind of like his breakout point where it's just like, okay, you are now just a top-end welterweight, and we expect you to fight high top-end fights all the rest of your career, you know?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I kind of feel like Gunnar Nelson has settled into that gatekeeper role in the division.
He's definitely been fighting a lot longer than Tumenov, and has the chances that Gunnar Nelson takes a huge step forward at this point seem a lot slimmer.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously we got an awesome fight. The Damian Maia fight was tons of fun, but it's one of those things that you basically we're seeing him being put in there with guys, and the fights very much seem to be a check to see if those guys can compete with the elite in welterweight still. Or at all, like in general, like Brandon Thatch, obviously, like that fight was very much a test to see if he was ready to step in. And Rick Story has moved on to fighting like Tarek Safadine, and Gunnar Nelson just never really seemed to put the component pieces together into like an MMA game. And I think Tumenov's gonna, as long as Tumenov can keep on his feet and doesn't have to contend with Gunnar's ground grappling, I think this is the fight that really shows how far, another fight I should say, that really shows how far Gunnar's striking has to go.
The only question there with me would be that, because Tumenov has become a much, much better counter wrestler, but Nelson is probably I would say without question, the best wrestler that Tumenov has ever fought.
Yeah.
Maybe Anthony Lapsley, but Anthony Lapsley is just not the fighter that Gunnar Nelson is and never has been.
Yeah, I think it's a good fight. It's a well-matched fight. It's a fight that either fighter could win. It's a test of both fighters' weaknesses, basically. And
it very much is. Nelson has to show more than he has in the past striking to compete with Tumenov there, and Tumenov has to show he really has to show that his wrestling has taken the steps that it looks like it has since his loss to Ildemar Alcantara.
Yeah, and Nelson kind of got a little bit of I feel like the Brandon Thatch win was a bit of a mirage in terms of where his striking was at, as Thatch basically fell asleep in the pocket on Nelson, and we didn't really see anything that different from Gunnar Nelson. And generally speaking, it's just something that I was really excited when Nelson came into the UFC. He's a fighter I really enjoy watching, and it's mildly frustrating to see him stagnate the way he has. But Tumenov, I think, if he can beat Tumenov, I think he could be getting back on track. But I favor Tumenov in this matchup, and I'm looking forward to seeing both of them moving forward. As I said, I like Gunnar Nelson, love watching him fight. It's just mildly frustrating to watch him kind of like not be able to put the pieces of his game together.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I mean, I don't know. It's just interesting to see too with like. With SBG Ireland and all that, and it's just whether or not that's a place for him to grow. And I know now he's training. It seems like he's training more in Iceland because we've certainly seen all the pictures of like Conor McGregor going to Iceland to train with Gunnar Nelson rather than Gunnar Nelson going to Ireland to train with Conor McGregor.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm interested to see what he comes with after that that Damian Maia loss, because that was a pretty definitive schooling.
Yeah, but to a certain extent too, that's just if your specialty is ground grappling, you don't beat Damian Maia.
No.
Because that's how Damian Maia beats you, and he's consistently proven that he's the best at that game. In MMA, out of MMA, there's literally, you can count on one hand the number of people who can outdo Damian Maia in that sphere. So to a certain extent, it was a fight where to win that fight, Nelson would have had to come in with a game plan that I think was counter to his nature. He was going to engage that fight in his strength and test himself against Damian Maia more so than come in and be like, I'm going to keep Maia on the feet. I'm going to work super hard on my striking, and I'm going to like try to point a decision at distance.
Yeah.
Sort of attitude. And that's one of the reasons why I like Gunnar, that he just went right in there, and to his credit, didn't get submitted, went the distance. So really, like I said, admire Gunnar Nelson a lot and really enjoy watching him fight. Really wish that whatever just hasn't clicked for him would just click.
Yeah. So the other fighter that we really, really have to talk about heavily on this card is, of course, Kyoji Horiguchi.
Yeah.
Who is kind of like Tumenov, straddling the border of me being a sensible prospect anymore. Also very young still, only 25, but also has fought for a long time now, stretching back to 2010, and has even fought for a title at this point. So,
yeah, but it's flyweight, so
yeah, it's flyweight. So the fact that he fought for a title doesn't mean anything. But I do think that the narrative of him is like getting pushed too far too soon. Really, kind of did a disservice to the fact of just how long he's spent developing his MMA game already. Mm-hmm. Like, it really wasn't too soon. It was maybe it would have been nice just maybe see him face another couple of top flyweights before DJ, but it's just not. That's not even a tenable idea, because maybe he loses to Ian McCall or something, and then where are you?
Yeah.
But we've already seen him bounce back against Chico Camus, so it's not really a question of whether or not Horiguchi can regain form. But it's interesting to see him in this fight against Neil Sear. I mean, this is kind of like, it seems like the UFC is now giving him a slow rebuild. It's like Sear's a good fighter, but athletically not competitive with Horiguchi, and doesn't really have the style to beat Horiguchi either.
No, it's a fun fight.
Yeah.
They put together a fight here that is going to be a really fun fight to watch. They buried it on the card. For some reason.
It's a feature fight pass prelim.
Oh,
they're pushing fight pass hard, and they want to get feature bouts that fans are going to actually tune in to fight pass to watch.
No, that makes sense. I was just looking at the list of the card. I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are, and there's probably a whole slew of reasons that they're trying to push fight pass. Anyway, I think this is a fight. This is a fun fight. It's gonna, as you said, I think it's a rebuilding process. I think they realize that Horiguchi is going to be very good for them in the future. And once we figure out what's going on with Demetrius Johnson in terms of like, is he going to lord over the flyweight division for what, like another 5 years? Is he going to move up? Is he going to get in a, it's one of those that once the future of Demetrius Johnson's determined, Horiguchi is going to fit very nicely into the flyweight division. He could even work his way back to a rematch one day, especially if seen Johnson. I don't see anyone beating him in the immediate near future, but it's MMA. Weirder things have happened. Also, Johnson's been fighting for what, 10 years almost at this point?
Has it been that long? It probably has.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in a division like that that's so much based on athleticism and athletic gifts, even a masterfully tactical fighter like Johnson, at some point, Johnson's at 9 right now. He's just still in his prime, so
yeah,
just at the tail end of it. But yeah, I mean, there's every chance too that he just decides after a while he doesn't feel like fighting anymore and wants to go do other stuff. He doesn't seem like he's really focused on beating Anderson Silva's record. But I wouldn't say that you get the sense that Demetrius Johnson is the most like devoted to staying with MMA for another decade.
Yeah, he seems to me the kind of guy that could walk away from the sport, but and if he doesn't, Father Time gets everybody.
Yeah.
So I think Horiguchi features into the future of this division as a top contender for years to come, or as a future title contender if Johnson moves on to either more dad life or another weight class. So I think they're smart to build him up slow. There's no reason to throw him back in there with Demetrius Johnson anytime soon.
Well, or even just Joseph Benavidez or
Mm-hmm.
those. John Dodson's gone now. Ali Bagatinov, guys like that could maybe hand him a competitive loss where it would be, with a fighter like Horiguchi, you might as well get a few action wins out of him, and Neil Seary should be a good way to go with that. Seary's a great fighter, really fun, really, willing to take the fight everywhere, aggressive, better at some things than you'd think he would be, especially his boxing. And it should make for an interesting fight.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, obviously, I mean, we can't not talk about Nicky Thrills, especially, I don't know if you've read Kareem's long form today, but he just did a big piece on Nikita Krylov and his move out of Ukraine into living and training in Russia now.
I saw the piece. I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
It's interesting stuff. I mean, talks about sort of Krylov used to work down in the coal mines in Ukraine before his fighting career really got going, and has had to move out because he's kind of a pro-Russian separatist Ukrainian and has become something of a persona non grata with Kiev, Ukrainian government, and Ukrainians in general. He's seen as somebody like a pro-separatist athlete, even though he very much feels like he's strongly Ukrainian. So it's an interesting piece. Strongly suggest people read it. And he's got a good, solid step-up fight in Francis-Mar Barroso. Oh, it's not even actually kind of a step-up. It's sort of I would almost describe it as a treading water fight. In Francis-Mar Barroso, especially coming from his win over Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I wouldn't describe Barroso as better at anything, particularly than de Lima.
Yeah, I feel like Barroso is a slightly more threatening fighter.
He's certainly a less threatening striker.
A less threatening striker, but I think Nikita's weaknesses, even to this day, he's really been improving his grappling, but he's still a suspect on the mat, still a suspect offensive wrestler.
Yeah.
Basically threw himself into 2 guillotines in his win last time, and I feel like if he does that against Barroso, that may not end very well for him. But Nikita Krylov, tough as shit. Really good aggressive striker for the division, coming from a Kyokushin karate background, just likes to wade in there, more than happy to hang out in the pocket and trade. And has been really coming along. Like, he's a guy I did not really see getting to this point at all. I really didn't think much of him when he came off the scene and got what was it? He got his solo Palele fight. His first fight was just like a gong show sort of fight.
Yeah, that fight was terrible.
Yeah, and then the loss to Ovince St. Preux. But he's put together a nice little win streak. Has put together a pretty comparable MMA game for 205 pounds. He can hang out in this division for a little while. I don't think he's like championship material or like top 5 material, but dude could definitely make some money in the UFC for a couple years.
Well, I mean, in that division too, like it's being top 5 material is like there are literally only 5 guys that ever seem to be able to do that at any moment in light heavyweight. It's not like lightweight or featherweight where there just seems to be this constant churn of like 20 people that could on any given month be a top 5 fighter.
Yeah.
Like in light heavyweight, there will be like a 3-year stretch where it'll be the same top 5 fighters.
Yeah.
And then maybe one of them gets replaced.
By a dude that was in the top 5 like 3 years ago.
Yeah, unfortunately. But he's certainly got, he's certainly got what it could take to just be a consistent top 10 guy, which is weird to say in that division. I mean, the combination of being big and tough and aggressive is a huge bonus for that division, and especially the fact too that I don't even know that his gas tank is all that great, but he fights really aggressively while gassed.
He keeps a good pace.
Yeah, he is really good at keeping pace after he's completely spent all of his energy.
Yeah.
So he's got the kind of tools that that win a lot of fights. They win more fights than they tend to lose, and the fact, he's actually a pretty good kicker, even if he's always going to be probably a fairly flaily striker.
Yeah.
And this Barbosa fight, I think it's just the right step. Even if it's not a step up, Barbosa's very tough and then very low output, very slow and controlling and grinding. Mm-hmm. I think that's just the right kind of fighter for Krylov to try and show off against again and try and just go out there and be a whirlwind of fists and elbows and shins and whatever else he can find to throw at somebody.
Yeah. Nikita's a lot of fun. Krylov, he pushes the pace. He's always exciting. So he's a fun fighter, and he's definitely been – you can see he's been working on improving his tools. So, yeah, I think this should be a good fight. Definitely worth watching. And I'm interested to see how Krylov handles Barbosa and if he ends up in some bad spots, if he's able to work out of them.
The other fighter on the run who's really, looks like an interesting talent in the UFC added recently is Karolina Kowalkiewicz,
who
is facing Heather Clark. I'm trying to think, is Heather... Yeah, Heather's she's as close as women's MMA gets to veteran fighters in that she's 35 and has been fighting for 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
Really solid, just should be kind of a showcase for Kowalkiewicz, I kind of feel like.
Yeah, and she's kind of like that. She is another one of those women's fighters that's bringing like the modern striking game to the women's side of the sport. She plays a very out-fightery, very grappling preventative sort of game. And it usually leads to her racking up a victory on the cards more so than finishing her opponent. But she puts good volume on. She sticks to the outside. She kicks well. And her clinch and her grappling is good enough to keep opponents off her.
Yep. She kind of typifies the Polish metagame at the moment, which is lots of grappling and lots of striking, and then not that much wrestling in between. But they are getting better at it. But it's definitely like classically the Polish fighter game is be a really aggressive striker and be a really aggressive grappler, and then let yourself get taken down a lot.
Yeah, but that is kind of like the up and coming nation game, though. Like, do you remember when that was the English MMA fighter rap that none of them could wrestle, and then
Yep.
For a long while, it's strong. Like anytime you're looking at a nation that's kind of like building or a region building its MMA scene, that usually tends to be you get a lot of fighters who are really focused on being aggressive and finishing the fight, and they kind of don't quite have that depth yet.
Yep. You see a lot of aggressive kickers with a really good armbar or triangle game.
Yeah.
But Heather Clark, she's mostly kind of known for being aggressive and then being basically being aggressive and being an aggressive grappler. Those are where she tends to be best, is when she can create a lot of scrambles and a lot of brawls. When she tends to meet better athletes, she kind of tends to lose. tends to get pushed around a little bit. I don't know that Kowalkiewicz has the athleticism to be a really top-tier fighter, but I think she should have enough to get by Heather Clark.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, there are a couple of new additions coming in on this card. Anna Elmos and Josh Emmett. Neither are quite like neither are what you'd consider a prototypical prospect. I believe both are in their early 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, both are in their early 30s. Both are kind of smallish for their weight classes. Both just kind of thrive on being aggressive and bullying.
Mm-hmm.
Emmett's got some pretty good power.
Dude is built like a bowling ball, and kind of looks like one. He looks like a white bowling ball.
Yeah. Yes, he does. And he just throws hands. He's got pretty decent movement, but small for the weight class. And just recently, he punched his ticket to the UFC with a regional win over who was it?
Giagos, yeah.
Yeah, and in a fight where he looked pretty good, but definitely also looked flustered at times.
Well, he kind of Giagos is one of those fighters. He's kind of a great case study in prototypical MMA prospects. In that Giagos was a very good athlete who just never had the consistent parts of a game that won fights at a high level against other fighters. He's the kind of guy that would like hurt somebody, hit a massive takedown, and then jump on a submission that he was never going to get, end up with them back on their feet, and then would eat 3 or 4 punches just because his game was just never connected enough, never technical enough. And Emmett really, I think, beat him just by staying consistently aggressive and being willing to brawl and sit down in the pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was one of those fights. Emmett really doesn't seem to, coming out of Team Alpha Male, doesn't really seem to have a lot of grappling or wrestling chops. Like, seems like a decent defensive wrestler, but other than that, just not really interested in engaging and grabbing people at all.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I mean, he looks like the kind of guy who almost certainly had a wrestling background of some sort. I'm trying to think of what, but I wouldn't know what it was.
Yeah, well, he's going.
Yeah, it looks like he was a wrestler, growing up, but it may be sort of the like wrestled and has abandoned that wrestling for the love of being a brawler.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's fighting John Tuck, who it should be an interesting fight. Tuck's looked better in his last fight, but to me, Tuck still kind of seems like a regional fighter who.
Well, Tuck's kind of a prototypical action fighter. Like he's gonna win when he gets the right action matchups, and he's gonna lose when he doesn't. And I mean, just based on Emmett coming in on short notice and being willing to just go in for a brawl, I kind of feel like Tuck can win this because he's the more technical, polished striker who's not coming in on short notice.
Yeah, but I think Tuck's also he wins when he gets a match with a guy who's at the bottom of the division. Like he tends to be he is usually. A loss to him is one of the last 2 fights that guy has in the UFC.
This is true.
So that's something that I kind of feel like Tuck's, and God, I have to hear he's a jiu-jitsu champion again. Yeah, he gets miscredentialed a couple times usually in his fights. Tuck's a solid, good athlete, solid fighter, but I'm not sure. He's definitely bottom third of the lightweight division.
Well, he just doesn't fight often enough to even know. Like, that's the thing. How would you even know at this point where John Tuck is, considering been fighting since 2007, and since fighting 3 times in 2007, he fought twice in 2009, once in 2011, once in 2012, once in 2013, twice in 2014, and once in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just not an often enough schedule to know anything about him. We know that guys like Kevin Lee and Norman Park were able to beat him, but Josh Emmett doesn't really seem like he's Kevin Lee or Norman Park.
No, that's it's a fight that I'm moderately interested in this fight, but I don't feel like it really gives us anything that interesting in the end.
No, it's two guys in their 30s who, I don't know, like, Tuck has gotten better lately, but it's hard to see, like, oh, do you have another huge leap in skill to go ahead of you at 31 with almost 10 years into your career?
Yeah, and on the other end, Anna, what's her last name?
Anna Elmos.
Anna Elmos, like, kind of interesting fighter, very aggressive. I'm not sure what she has for the Iron Lady. Like,
I might pick her to win this, honestly.
yeah.
I think the big thing Elmos has is power, which has been a problem for Jermaine Durandamy. Is that Durandamy is a good kickboxer, and she might be able to win this just because via not getting finished, she will be able to control Elmos and sort of take over. But Durandamy's fights, it's sort of like she doesn't put out a good pace, and she doesn't hurt people. So she really has to get all the range and space she needs or be able to really control them physically to win.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And she's another fighter who's been fighting forever and has just very rarely fights.
Yeah, this is the fight. I'm more interested in this fight. I think it's going to give us some more interesting results and a little bit more because I think you're right about Anna's power. She grows, and I think it's more impactful to the division. It's one that I'm more interested to see because I think of the two newcomers to the UFC, I think Anna's the more likely to do something in the UFC than Emmett.
Yeah, I agree. Especially, I mean, if they do finally figure out a way to open up that 125-pound division that it sort of seems like they're inching towards, Elmos would be a natural fit for it. And yeah, the 135-pound division, there are a lot of fighters in there like Durandamy who aren't bad necessarily, but they aren't exciting in any way, shape, or form. Like, they haven't separated themselves from the fighters around them in any meaningful way. So if Elmos can be a powerful, aggressive kickboxer, that could be a big breath of fresh air in that division.
Yep, I agree.
Just on experience and size, I probably wouldn't pick her to just flat out beat Durandamy, but she could give her a ton of trouble. I mean, you know, Julie Kedzie took Durandamy to a split decision, and basically every really good athlete that Durandamy has fought, or powerful athlete that she's fought, has beat her. So
yeah, that's true. If I remember, and it's been a while since we've seen Durandamy fight, but she looks like she was much improved in her last fight, which was now over a year ago. So
yeah. And
who knows?
But to that point, Pacheco is also like the athletic bottom end of her division.
Oh yeah. Then totally fair point. But Durandamy looked like her own personal like approach to fighting looked different, looked improved. So but again, it's been over a year, so who knows what we get on that end.
Otherwise, on this card, there are a bunch of fighters who are kind of fighting to regain some of their prospect status. You know, we have Leon Edwards.
Whoa, hold on. What about Chris Wade?
Oh yeah, Chris Wade. That's right. Chris Wade is one of those dudes that I kind of wrote off for no really good reason, and so I now forget that he's a prospect.
I know what it was. It was the Zhang fight.
It was the Zhang Li Peng fight. Yeah, that was pretty much it.
That was it.
But Wade looked fantastic against Mehdi Baghdad. That looked like he'd taken a real leap forward. And this fight with Rustam Khabilov has a lot of interest in it because I mean, the fight with Baghdad, it really seemed like Wade had taken this step toward a big step in becoming a more aggressive power wrestler,
Mm-hmm.
which, even on the regionals, coming up as a longtime wrestler as he did, he was more of a reactive takedown artist. It'd be like you'd throw a couple combos at him, he would duck under and get you down, and then he wasn't necessarily a force as a wrestler, as his long string of regional decisions would suggest, but he was a good one, a good technical one. And it
Mm-hmm.
seems like that technique has taken a big step forward, and it's allowed him to be more of a power aggressive wrestler who doesn't have to wait on opponents.
Yeah.
But now he's fighting Rustam Khabilov, and that makes that a really interesting proposition.
Yeah. Yeah. Wade chain wrestling really well.
He
Um,
does.
and I'm really looking forward to seeing how that matches up with Habilov. And because Wade still fights, he comes in, he's still a wrestler, and he still wrestles like a wrestler. He gets in there and he won't let you go. He continues to attack. He continues to go for like wrestling techniques that you don't see very often in MMA. And he absolutely, as long as he's got a hand on a guy, he seems happy.
Yeah, I
And
mean, in that Yagos fight, Yagos was able to take him down, was able to outmuscle him standing up, was basically the better athlete. But every time he would try to out wrestle and out grapple Wade for more than a second, he would just get swept and reversed and run over for the rest of the round.
yeah,
And this is going to be interesting because Habeloff is all about the chain wrestling too. Like
right.
that's the focus of his game.
I honestly kind of hoping we get like a solid U.S. versus Russia wrestling match in an MMA cage because that would be fun.
That would be the best way for this fight to go. It has a chance to become an ugly kickboxing bout where Wade's low power, reasonably high output kickboxing goes against Habelov's high power, low output kickboxing, and that could be incredibly frustrating. But
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, we get a wrestling match out of it. Hopefully, both of them are very confident that they can out wrestle one another.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that. So
That's a great fight, yeah. And I forgot about Chris Wade. Um, Otherwise, like I said, we've kind of got some guys who are looking to regain prospect status in one form or another. Ulka Sasaki, Dominic Waters, Leon Edwards. Um, Willie Gates has been around for a long time
I
at
was
this
saying even
point.
Dominic Waters is kind of on the like the other end of he's like on the end of being a prospect, the
Yep.
very end. Um,
Yeah, he's been around for a while. He's only recently, I think, made a jump to a bigger camp, now training at Jackson Wink.
yeah,
So I think that could pay dividends for him, but it hasn't yet. And he, unfortunately, because of his willingness to take short notice fights and fight anyone anywhere, jumped in against Dong Young Kim in his last bout and just got wrecked.
yeah. I kind of feel like the bottom end of this card, the Dominic Waters, Leon Edwards, Willie Gates, Yakuda Sasaki matches. We're seeing the UFC make more cuts than we have in recent years. I feel like the losers of both these fights are getting cut. I kind
Yeah.
of feel like this is very much a show us something if you want to stay sort of
I
fight.
really hope Edwards doesn't, but we've seen that there seems to be
I
something.
honestly feel every fight below the Rustam Kavlov Chris Wade fight could be a fight like that, where it show us something or get cut.
Yeah, I could very easily see that. Well, except for Horiguchi Siri, probably.
Yeah, no, excluding that fight. But although, like, I think hasn't Siri has been saying something about his future in MMA.
Well, he basically just I think he did an interview recently where he's just like I don't know when I might be done. I mean, he's not young. He's 36. He's not looking at this for the long term. He's not looking at winning a title or going on a run. He just kind of wants to keep doing it for as long as it's still fun. And
Yeah, I mean, I could, yeah. So they'll probably hold on to Siri just because they probably want to go back to Ireland.
yeah, he's a great action fighter. Good
Yeah, but
good
every other
card
fight,
filler.
um, Kenbald, or how do you say Magnus is the
Sedenblad.
Stenblog, Magnus Stenblog, Gareth McLeland. That's another fight. Like, I think that's a tough fight because Magnus. I've been waiting for that kid to. I mean, like, talk about a dude. Wasn't he like a prospect we talked about on our first MMA Prospectus show like a year and a half ago, something like that?
Maybe. I mean, Sedenblad's been fighting since 2007. The big thing for him is that he's just been injured for a couple of years now.
Yeah, he was out for a full year. Look, and his even before he got hurt, it's not like he had like this big functioning MMA game that he was really like leaning on. He was basically a stand on the outside and kick grappler who would shoot in from like a mile away and then either sat in your guard and collected rounds or hoped you rolled up and tried to wrestle him so he could front headlock choke you. And that's I mean,
I think he beats Garrett McClellan, but he's not really. That's not really what we're talking about here. Anyway, I want to move on because there's not much else to talk about on this card, and talk about some of the other fighters that fought last week that we missed over. Just real quick. Most notably, the Titan card had a lot of prospects on it. Bilal Muhammad is probably very close to punching a ticket to the UFC with a real strong win in his. I want to say it was a title bout. Who he beat? God damn it! God, and this is somebody we scouted a while ago. He beat Steve Carl. We scouted Muhammad a while ago. He's a former Bellator fighter. Not really an exciting athlete, but he's really become a more and more competent, comfortable, technical boxer, and he's accurate. And she shows enough of like the consistent, it's not power, but it's so consistent he's so consistent with his accuracy and his output that he just busts guys up over rounds and rounds and can get TKOs that way. His fight with Steve Carl was really very dominant. Looked great.
Yeah.
See him making that jump. Also on that card, Jason Novelli, who we've talked about before, I think. Decent technical Muay Thai striker. Chase Sherman, heavyweight. Jack May broke his leg on him, so I don't know how much that means. But he looked like a good athlete, good, competent, powerful athlete. Not like an amazing, I'm not, trumpeting him as some next big thing, but somebody that could take a next step and get somewhere. Bruce, I have no idea how to pronounce this, Luchmedial on the undercard, good athlete, good high output, jabbing, probing striker, took a nice win. A lot of decent performances on that. Also, we had the Fight Nights card from Russia last week where top heavyweight prospect Sergei Pavlovich kind of got a struggling win over longtime vet Baga Agaev. Just didn't look like he had the same snap and the same dominance as normal. Mikhail McNaughton fought to another draw. I think McNaughton maybe kind of starting to find, like, I watched that fight, and he's looking like a more technical fighter than ever. Like, he's got all these little tricks he's employing. He does all this crafty stuff. He looks good, but he's just not quite a finishing light heavyweight. And in light heavyweight, without that that finishing power, it's just so easy to get sucked into these weird fights where you're not quite winning, you're not quite losing, even if you're landing the better shots. I'm not terribly surprised that he's going to draws. He's going to have to find a more consistent, like his wrestling game or his grappling game are going to need to become more dominant. If he can't find more power in his striking game.
Yeah.
And also on that card, Arthur Bagatinov, Ali Bagatinov's little brother, fought. And he's starting an MMA career. Looks like he's still learning the basics. His striking's not fantastic, but he kind of got frustrated and just decided to grab his opponent and just slam him to the ground where he TKO'd him. So interesting performance from him. Somebody to watch. Obviously, somebody who's going to have UFC ties to going forward. Somebody who's going to have a pathway to bigger promotions, and people are going to have their eye on him. So something to watch. And Landon Vinod, I didn't get to see his fight, but he's a guy that fought last week at Rocky Mountain Fights, I want to say, something like that. Some small promotion. He was supposed to fight for an RFA title not long ago, but he missed weight. He's a Jackson Wink fighter, really good, interesting athlete, funky style. He got a big win, so that's something to watch out for. Just of guys over the last week. Other than that, I don't know that we have anything else to cover.
There's an ACB card this weekend, but it's not that. There's nothing really. There's like one guy probably worth really. I mean, it's got some good fighters on it, but not really prospects. More like finished products waiting for their call.
Mm-hmm.
But Marabek Karganov looks like a pretty solid young fighter. Going to be fighting on the undercard there. Other than that, most of the other guys, some good fights there. Most of the other guys there, finished products, kind of waiting for their call.
All right. Well, on that note, you can find me on Twitter at Zane Simon. You can find Tom on Twitter at TP_Grant. You can find both of us over at Bloody Elbow. Subscribe to MMANation.com. That's DOTCOM over on YouTube. That way you get more videos like this, Bloody Elbow analysis, shows, all that good stuff. We'll be coming at you with a vivisection for this UFC show coming up and an Invicta vivisection too. And we've already had a Care Don't Care. I don't know if we've had If I Did It yet this week or not, but we got a lot of video content to watch. So stay tuned. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Give us a thumbs up, like, and we'll see you next time.